There's a lot of talk about George Washington's cherry tree story. Personally, I don't care much about the cherry tree. What I do care about is whether you can lead like George Washington. Can you show up for people? Can you be honest with them? Can you make hard decisions? Today we're going to look at 10 leadership lessons from George Washington. Let's get to it. No. 1. Lead by example. George Washington was known for setting the highest standards for himself and others. And he always practiced what he preached. Expected his troops to endure hardships with him, sharing their privations. And he urged them to maintain high ethical standards. At the Battle of Trenton, he decided to attack on Christmas, because he believed his troops deserved a morale boost. But he didn't just tell them he wanted to attack on Christmas. He went out front and personally led the charge. He put himself on the line, and in doing so, he earned their respect and admiration. His soldiers followed him not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That's leadership. Don't tell people what you want them to do. Do it with them. No. 2. Integrity and honesty. Washington believed that honesty and integrity were essential to effective leadership. In his farewell address, he warned against the dangers of political parties and urged the nation to eschew the poisonous disease of party spirit. And he wasn't just talking about politics. He meant life. He urged the American people to be truthful and honorable in all aspects of their lives. He wrote, "It is better that 10 innocent men should suffer than that one innocent man should be condemned." When you lead with integrity, people trust you. They may not always agree with you, but if they know you're honest and sincere, they'll follow you. No. 3. Humility and power. George Washington was offered a crown, but he turned it down. In 1789, when the Constitutional Convention was deadlocked over the issue of a national executive, George Washington, who was unanimously elected as the first president of the United States, could have easily proclaimed himself king, but he chose not to. Instead, he took the oath of office as an instrument of the people, said, "I will, therefore, as the first object of my official duties, raise an humble and a prayerful tribute to the Almighty Creator of all things." He said this at the swearing-in ceremony. He could have been king, but he was president. There are people who want to be president. There are people who want to be prime minister. But why? Because they want to rule people. A leader doesn't rule people. A leader serves people. That's exactly what George Washington did. Number 4, perseverance and adversity. George Washington understood that leadership meant making hard decisions and taking risks. Despite facing numerous setbacks, including the harsh winter encampment at Valley Forge, Washington and his troops endured. Their perseverance paid off when they ultimately won the war. As Washington once said, "The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." During the darkest days at Valley Forge, while most of his troops were barefoot and shirtless, and many were dying from disease and starvation, George Washington kept going. If you want to be a leader like George Washington, you have to persevere in adversity. You have to keep going when everyone else has given up. No. 5. A vision for the future. George Washington understood that true leadership meant thinking beyond immediate concerns and having a vision for the future. While other generals might have been content with tactical victories, Washington always kept the big picture in mind. For example, during the Revolutionary War, Washington famously said, "I prefer taking the whole seat at once." This meant that instead of settling for small victories, he wanted to aim for comprehensive solutions. 2 problems. He never lost sight of the ultimate goal: independence for the United States. To be a great leader, you need a vision. You have to be able to see what needs to be done and work towards it. No. 6. Decisiveness. George Washington was decisive, and he knew how to make hard choices quickly. During the Revolutionary War, Washington made several critical decisions that helped secure victory for the Americans. For example, he decided to attack the British at Trenton despite heavy losses in his army. He decided to cross the Delaware River in the first place. These decisions were risky, but they paid off. And they showed the world that Washington was a decisive leader. Once he made up his mind, he stuck to it. You have to be able to make tough decisions and stick by them. No. 7. Adaptability. One of the key traits of a good leader is the ability to learn from mistakes and adapt to new situations. George Washington was able to do this effectively throughout his career. For example, after the British defeated the Americans at the Battle of Long Island, Washington was forced to retreat. But instead of simply retreating, he used the time to regroup and plan his next move. This adaptability allowed him to eventually win the war. Be adaptable, learn from your mistakes, and be willing to change course when necessary. No. 8. Empowering others. George Washington understood that he could undo everything himself, and that he needed to empower others to help him achieve his goals. He appointed capable officers to key positions and gave them the authority to make decisions. For example, he appointed General Knox to oversee the artillery at Valley Forge, even though Knox was a younger and less experienced officer. This decision paid off when Knox successfully defended the Americans against a British attack. Leaders don't do it alone. Good leaders know how to empower others and share the workload. No. 9. Commitment to unity. George Washington was committed to the unity of the new nation, and he worked tirelessly to build consensus and compromise. During his presidency, he faced numerous challenges that threatened to divide the country, such as the Whiskey Rebellion and the debate over the National Bank. But Washington was able to keep the country together by working to find common ground and build consensus among the different factions. To be a leader like George Washington, you have to be committed to the greater good. You have to be willing to put aside your own personal interests for the good of the organization. And finally, no. 10. Graceful exit. George Washington set a powerful example of a graceful exit when he voluntarily stepped down after serving 2 full presidential terms. By doing so, he established a precedent for peaceful transitions of power in the United States. He didn't feel that he was irreplaceable, and he didn't try to hold on to power for the sake of it. He knew when it was time to let go. And in doing so, he helped to ensure the stability and continuity of the young nation. He didn't have to leave. Could have run for a 3rd term, but he didn't. He left, and he left gracefully. And that's a lesson for us all. So there you have it, 10 leadership lessons from George Washington. It's worth noting that he wasn't perfect. He owned slaves, and he lived in a different time. But these are some important lessons that we can apply to our lives today. So how will you lead today? The world is watching. And remember, you don't have to be a president to be a leader. You can be a leader in your company, in your community, in your family. Leadership isn't about position. It's about impact. And George Washington